here we are. We're just a couple of days away from a brand new year. 2022 has given us some movies I've absolutely loved. There have been some pleasant surprises. And then there's the movies on this list. Movies so forgettable, boring, offensive, or cynical that you wonder how or why was this movie made? Here are my picks for the 10 worst movies of 2022. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Share your picks for the worst movies of the year. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list. And I would love to see yours as we go into this. Some of these movies I was a little bit more positive on when they first came out, but with time, only the bad taste has remained in my mouth. These are the movies which left me with the worst impression. Real quick before we get started, I've got one quick announcement. Next week, I'm going to be leading 2 different panels at Fan Expo New Orleans. The first panel will be a live recording of my most anticipated movies and TV shows of 2023. You can be present for a recording of a video for this channel. Second panel will be on how to grow a nerdy YouTube channel. Also, in the next few months, I'm planning on being in Cleveland, Portland, and Orlando. You can find out more details in the description down below, and let's get started. Kicking things off is Don't Worry, Darling. Now, this is a frustrating movie to include on this list because there's no shortage of talent on display here. Unfortunately, all of that talent is used to tell a story that's incredibly stupid and pretty offensive.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
The danger of building your entire movie around a mystery or intrigue is that if you don't deliver a great twist reveal, then your whole movie starts to fall apart. And in the case of Don't Worry, Darling, when it first starts to give you answers, I just kind of rolled my eyes at how obvious and predictable it was. And then it keeps on going and gets more and more ridiculous. It's like the bad M. Night Shyamalan films where they're really good at having a hook that draws you in. And as soon as you see what the twist is and realize what's really going on, you feel like you just wasted 2 hours of your life.
Worst ending ever.
So that's what makes the movie bad. But what left a bad taste in my mouth is that it just came off like an out-of-touch, rich celebrity director trying to comment on something she didn't understand with a straw man argument. It presents itself as a movie standing up for the oppressed, but it's being made by a person in a position of power with tens of millions of dollars from a corporation, and it's dunking on less privileged people. That's the sort of thing that just puts a terrible taste in my mouth, especially when it's this stupid. Number 9, Thor Love and Thunder. This movie feels like it had so much potential, and then it just sabotaged itself by going so goofy that it turned into self-parody. On the one hand, it wants to tackle a bunch of serious philosophical and theological questions about evil, love, and death, and on the other hand, we have screaming goats, Van Damme split kicks, and Zeus flicking off Thor's clothes.
And flick. Oh.
And then there's Christian Bale.
It's time for another good idea, bad idea. Good idea.
Hiring Oscar-winning dramatic actor Christian Bale to play your villain.
Bad idea.
Putting Oscar-winning dramatic actor Christian Bale in the goofiest movie in your entire franchise. Superficially, that's the stuff that annoyed me about the film, but it's the utter irreverence towards the MCU which made this movie age so poorly in my mind. In New Asgard, there's a tourist ice cream parlor called Infinity Cones. That's the MCU equivalent of Auschwitz deep-fried chicken. Just saying that comparison makes me feel a little bit sick in my stomach because genocide isn't funny, it's sickening. And Taika Waititi thought the mechanism for a 5-year genocide apocalypse was a great opportunity for a sight gag.
Because that's what heroes do.
I get that it's just a joke and maybe it didn't land for me, but at the center of all of this is that Taika Waititi treats everything in the MCU as a joke. In which case that irreverence ties into the plot where he just makes up new powers for Thor and he makes up new ways that you can become a space god. He even includes a love triangle between a space god, a woman, and a hammer.
What? We were just talking.
You serious?
If everything is a big joke, nothing really matters. And as someone that's been a fan of the MCU since day number one back in May of 2008, that irreverence towards this universe really stepped on my toes. Next up, Spiderhead. Now, I don't have a whole lot to say about this movie because I've forgotten most of it. And that's exactly why it's on this list. It is unforgivably bland and forgettable, and I'm not really sure why. It was directed by Joseph Kosinski, who directed another movie this year, Top Gun Maverick. Here I am! Now, I don't want to spoil tomorrow's video, but Joseph might have the distinction of having put a movie on both my best of the year list and my worst of the year list. The movie was also written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the writers of Deadpool and Zombieland, two movies bursting with energy and wit. Whether you love or hate them, you remember them, and it also stars Thor and Rooster. With all of that talent, I don't understand how they made this movie. It's a totally generic medical thriller that's pretty predictable. I don't know what drew all of this talent to this project, and I don't know how this much talent made a movie with so little life and wit. Number 7, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules. 2022 felt like the year of low-effort sequels and remakes from Disney+. They needed content to fill their streaming service, so they just milked every single property that they had.
Baby, one more time.
And that brings us to Roderick Rules. Now, I have to be careful while talking about this film because my kids are massive Diary of a Wimpy Kid fans. They literally go to bed every night listening to Diary of a Wimpy Kid audiobooks. They are the target audience to be exploited by... They are the target audience for this film. But what specifically makes it so bad is that it's just utterly devoid of creativity or novelty. Roderick Rules was adapted live action 10 years ago, and it was the best movie in the entire franchise. We have seen this story before, and we've seen it much better. There's like 15 different Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, but once again, they decided to adapt a story which has been adapted before. There's nothing new, there's nothing fresh. We're just translating the same thing again into animation. Why? Because it takes effort to try something new. It's much easier and quicker to copy what's done in the past, and this doesn't exist to do something new. It exists to generate easy, recognizable content for a streaming service.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
Number 6, Eraser Reborn, a remake I can guarantee you not a single person on planet Earth was asking for. Generally speaking, I don't like to dunk on direct-to-video action movies on my end of the year list because they have limited resources, unless it's a remake or a sequel to an established property or a blockbuster film. In the case of Eraser Reborn, they've made the odd decision of remaking a mid-tier, mid-90s Arnold Schwarzenegger action vehicle.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Which has been erased from most people's memories because it's only memorable for being a big, slick, expensive Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle that came out at the tail end of his reign as the top action movie star in the entire world. So what happens when you take Eraser and remove Arnold Schwarzenegger, the budget, and the slickness? You're left with a cheap, generic action thriller.
Not a great plan.
It brings nothing to the table. There's no reason anyone would ever choose to watch this movie instead of just watching the original. It has absolutely no reason for existing, and what I really don't understand is why would they choose Eraser? It has no brand recognition in the year 2022. Then we have Morbius. Here they take a B-list Spider-Man villain, remove Spider-Man, and make Morbius a hero. What could possibly go wrong? Apparently a whole lot. At its absolute best, this would be a generic superhero movie that feels like a throwback to a time when superhero movies had more simplistic plots. But this is not this movie at its best. It feels like a movie that was killed by committee and compromise, where they just kept tinkering with it and changing things over and over again, and there were just too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks, too many cooks.
It doesn't feel like one unified vision at all. It feels like the director wanted to tell a character-based story, but then one of the producers over here really wanted a quick action-based movie, but then there was another producer that wanted to set up this shared Spider-Man universe.
This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense.
None of it works. It just feels very choppy and forced together, like big chunks of the movie were cut out, and then they did a bunch of reshoots and forced in a bunch of scenes last minute. The movie was such a joke that it spawned roughly 1 billion memes, which caused Sony to think that maybe people will go see the movie if they re-released it in theaters, so they put it back in theaters where it promptly bombed a second time. Number 4, Firestarter, another movie I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it was just so bland and forgettable. It starts out as an utterly generic Stephen King adaptation, and it only gets worse from there. Once the movie finishes its setup, it's clear they had no idea where to go with the story or what they were trying to do. So it's a movie that feels like it has absolutely no second act. Just a very long first act, and then no development, no twists and turns. We just rush into a third act final showdown.
That's a weird story.
And it's a movie that just takes itself way too seriously. Like, it's about a girl that screams and shoots fireballs. It's kind of silly stuff. Probably works better in written form than in live action, but this movie takes it as dead serious. No camp, no cheese, no fun. It does it all with a straight face, and it does absolutely nothing interesting. Real quick before I give you my top 3, or I guess bottom 3 as it is, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Share your picks for the worst movies of 2022. Also, I've got a bunch of these end of the year lists. You can check them out right up here in this playlist. Then this weekend will be my annual live stream where I rank every movie that I saw in 2022 from the worst to the best. We're going to start a brand new year by looking back at every movie that I saw in the previous year. Hopefully you can join me for that live stream. In third place, The Ice Age Adventures of Buckwild. And once again, Disney milks one of their properties for more content on Disney+.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
This once box office juggernaut has been relegated to straight to streaming spin-off dumped on Disney Plus in January. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Now, this project was originally going to be a TV series, and then they decided to convert it into a movie. And that's exactly what it feels like. The animation is cheap, the voice talent not as strong, and it feels like a series of Saturday morning cartoons strung together. I suppose Disney was trying to set people's expectations for what was going to be on Disney Plus in 2022 by kicking off the year with the first of many low-effort projects that rely on brand recognition in order to get people to watch. Our runner-up, Jeepers Creepers Reborn. Given that this franchise's peak in popularity was like 20 years ago, and the very real and serious controversies surrounding series creator Victor Salva, this feels like a franchise that was probably better left forgotten, but somebody thought, this is the franchise we need to bring back in 2022. On a story level, it's just really boring. The first 2/3 of this movie are about a couple going to a horror convention, and the first half of this movie spends more time on the girl selecting her costume to wear to the convention than it does on the creeper killing people. Likewise, if you're a fan of this franchise, you probably find this movie pretty offensive because it erases the good movies in the franchise from the continuity and just says that those are movies that take place in the world of this movie.
Give me a break. That's a bunch of malarkey.
But the reason that this is one of the worst movies of the year is the unbelievably large amount of awful green screen. It feels like this entire film was shot on a green screen. And for some reason, instead of just going out to a gas station, they did awful green screen compositions that just make the entire thing look incredibly cheap and artificial.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
And that brings me back to my original thought. Why didn't they just leave this franchise dead? No one would have complained. And why would you bring it back if you don't have the budget to do it right? But the worst movie of the year, Disney's Pinocchio. I would declare this another cheap, low-effort Disney Plus live-action remake designed to just milk a property. But I can't because this movie cost $150 million. Here, Academy Award-winning director Robert Zemeckis teams up with Academy Award-nominated screenwriter Chris Weiss to remake one of the most celebrated and praised animated films of all time, and it stars multiple Academy Award-winning actor Tom Hanks. There's not a weak link in the chain. These are some of the best people in each of their fields, and they had a whole lot of Disney money. Yet somehow they managed to deliver one of the most lifeless and cynical films of the entire year. There's literally a scene in this movie where we see Geppetto's collection of 19th century clocks. And apparently Geppetto is either a time traveler or an incredible visionary because he owns a bunch of clocks featuring Disney characters.
Are you kidding me?
Whether this was just a cheap opportunity to promote other Disney products or cheap nostalgia baiting, the sequence exists entirely to remind you of other content on Disney Plus.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
And then it's a movie with no balls or edge. The original Disney classic was a morality tale. It features sequences with children drinking and smoking. But you can't have children drinking and smoking in a 21st century Disney movie. So they just soften all of the rough edges and change it just a little bit, and in the process, eliminate the entire purpose of these sequences. By the time you get to the end of the movie and the final shot, the message of the film is confusing and contradictory. Why? Because this movie wasn't made because they had something new to say. It was made because movies like Beauty and the Beast 2017 made over $1 billion, and they decided it would be profitable to remake all of their classic animated films. Doesn't matter if it's a good fit for being remade, it's an easy way to generate content with a recognizable brand. This is factory filmmaking at its absolute worst, and for that reason, it's my pick for the worst movie of 2022. There's a companion video to this over on my Patreon page with more of my picks for the worst movies of the year. You can learn more about Patreon at the link down below in the description. You can check out my other end of the year lists right over there. And remember to come back this weekend for my live stream where I'm going to rank every movie that I saw in 2022. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.